What's going on, and welcome to the Peak Podcast, where we explore techniques and stories on how entrepreneurs overcome challenges and how self-awareness influences their peak fulfillment, both in their personal and business life. The podcast is structured using time batching. Each section has a time limit, and guests have a limited amount of time to deliver some value. Again, my name is Kyle Nelson. This is my co-host, Eli Libby, and we're really excited about this guest. We met him through a mastermind we're a part of, and we're finally able to connect here on the Peak Podcast. Eli, you want to jump in and give a little bit more detail on how this podcast is ran?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm stoked to be here. So our podcast, like we talk a lot about in our program, is about time batching and how to do that, how to be productive, and how to ultimately be balanced. So we're going to eat our own dog food. We put that and we break that down into a podcast. And each episode asks the same amount of questions and the same type of questions. And you guys can pick up little nuggets along the way on how each guests answer those. So I think without further ado, Kyle, let's bring Erick in.
Today we have Erick Cloward. He is the podcast host of Stoic Coffee, and he's got an awesome leadership coaching program he's got going on. Erick, welcome to the Peak Podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me, guys. Good to be here.
Absolutely.
And Erick, where are you calling in from? Just so our listeners know.
So I'm in Amsterdam right now. So I moved here just this past January, and right now I'm staying at an extended stay. Trying to find an apartment is a bit challenging here. And as you can see, I'm in what I call the Richard Marx suite, that little banner back there, which they have up on the wall. It says right here waiting for you. So
right on. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Excited to dive in. Kyle, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. As you guys know on the Peak Podcast, we just jump right into it. So for the first question, Erick, who exactly are you and what is your background?
So I was in tech for 25 years as a software developer and CTO. And about 7 years ago, I stumbled onto Stoicism through Tim Ferriss. He mentioned the Guide to the Good Life, The Art of Stoic Joy by William Irvine. And for me, I'm kind of a wordsmith. I love reading and I'm always interested in things. And he said it was one of the books that changed his life. And when I heard Stoic Joy, I was like, wait a second, Stoic Joy, because I didn't know Stoicism was actually a philosophy. I just knew the term Stoic, like most people do, as somebody, who's very unemotional. So it piqued my interest. And so he was like, this is one book that has absolutely changed my life. And Tim reads a whole ton. And so for him to give it that kind of high praise, I bought the book. And my first time through, I got some out of it. But it wasn't until the second time through when I bought the audiobook and would listen to it to and from work. And that 20 minutes of just uninterrupted listening to it, I had so many light bulb moments, just so many moments of things just like, oh, whoa, wow, why didn't I ever know this? Why didn't I learn this when I was young? It would have helped out so much. And so I started really diving into Stoic philosophy at that point. And in January of 2018, one of my New Year's resolutions was to start a podcast. And it didn't matter what I started it on. I just wanted to make a podcast just to practice making a podcast. And Stoicism was top of mind. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just talk about Stoicism on my podcast. And it was just a practice. And after I did 10 episodes, I did them daily for 137 days in a row, which was quite a feat. My ex-partner was like, okay, if you're going to do this, you got to do at least 100. And I was like, okay. Cause she's like, cause you tend to quit things when they get hard. And so you need to do 100 episodes. I'm like, all right. And I didn't really plan on doing it a daily thing. It just kind of happened. It was like, okay, well, let me make one. And then because these ones were very short, they were between 3 and 5 minutes. And we're usually just me talking about an idea, maybe some notes at some point. And after 137 days, by that point, I'd had about how many episodes? So 137 episodes. I had, tens of thousands of downloads. I think it was close to 100,000 at that point. And I was just like, okay. And people were emailing me from Brazil and from all over the world. And I was just like, this is really cool. And people were saying, hey, this is really helpful. And so then I turned it into a weekly one so that I could dive into the topics a bit more, and found that taking the time each week to sit down and write for about Sometimes it would be, actually take me a couple of days to write it because some of the topics were pretty challenging.
Mm.
But normally it takes me, when I sit down and write an episode, it usually takes me about 4 to 6 hours.
Okay.
But lately it's been shorter than that simply because I know the material so well. I've been
Wow.
thinking about these things for so much. I mean,
Right.
every single day I think about these things and process them and work on them.
Wow. That is amazing. I wanted to go back real quick. There was a spot in the story that you said you were driving, you had these 20-minute drives, and you were having some aha moments. What can you remember one of those aha moments or like light bulb moments when you were listening to that book? I'm super curious what it is. And I'm sure the audience is as well.
Yeah, for me, like one of the most important was I used to have, like many people, problems with anger. I would just get angry about stupid things and
Yeah.
Mhm.
always felt like that it was outside of my control.
Okay.
And a lot of that came from my childhood. My dad was very angry. He had a lot of demons. It was pretty violent when we were younger, and as we got older and bigger, then less so because we could actually hit back, even though he was far stronger than I'll ever be. I mean, he was a very, very strong guy. But once I understood the what's called the dichotomy of control, which is the Stoic idea of there are only a few things you can control in this life, and those things are the way that you think about things, the choices that you make, and the actions that you take, and everything else is outside of your control. And really starting to internalize that into a way where I understood that all these things just happen, and whether I like them or not, they're happening, which goes
Mhm.
along with one of their other things called amor fati, which means to love your fate, which means don't just accept that all these external things are happening to you. If you can find ways to love everything that happens to you, because it's going to happen to you whether you like it or not,
Mhm.
and you can either hate it or love it. It's not going to change whether it happened. It simply changes your perspective on that. And from that point on, it was a bit easier when things would happen just to be like, okay, this is happening. What do I want to do about it?
Yeah.
Rather than being so reactive, it really helped me to develop that space in between the stimulus and response and have that like, okay, this happened. Let me think about it. What do I control in this situation?
Mhm.
Oh, I can control how I respond, and that's about it. Okay, well,
Yeah.
better response.
Amazing. That's like the pinnacle of self-awareness. We
Mhm.
talk about that all the time in our program. And I think that is like a highlight of that.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump in. We got an icebreaker for you before we really get into the meat of the content. So, if you were to invite 3 people, I'm really excited to hear what you say about this one. If you were to invite 3 people, living or dead, to a dinner party, who would they be and why?
Even though he's not a Stoic, he was a pre-Stoic, would definitely be Socrates. I would
Mm.
love to watch how he questions people, because the Socratic method is all about how to ask questions and how to do so in a way that isn't just that isn't a way of picking on somebody else, but really digging in and honestly trying to dissect what it is they're talking about. Like when he's in the Plato's Dialogues, Laches, where they're talking about, should they learn ground fighting or should they learn cavalry fighting? What's the best for our sons? And he's like, well, then he would ask questions on that, and then they got to the point where it was like, really, well, what we're talking about is not necessarily what's the best way to fight, but what about bravery? And then they dig into bravery and they
dive into it.
they dive into it really deep, and then it really comes down to, after asking more and more questions about it, so what you're really asking is, how do you teach your sons character? How do you teach them to be great people? And by that type of thinking, it's just,
That's amazing.
that really blows my mind. 2 other people. Wow, this is so hard because there's so many interesting people.
I know.
Another one he's still alive, and he's just been an idol of mine from when I was a kid. Has nothing to do with Stoicism, but just a very intense person is Mandy Patinkin. So he played Inigo Montoya in The Princess Bride.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he's also a Broadway performer, but he just has this intensity about him for anything that he does. He
Hmm.
never does it just a little bit. It's
Full on.
All
you know,
the way.
full on. He's like
Yeah.
he's all in with whatever it is he's doing. I mean, think about it in The Princess Bride.
I like that.
They fenced the first, most of that scene with their left hands.
Wow.
Because remember that, like, the
I didn't know
whole
that.
switch up is
Oh,
I'm not
right, yeah.
left-handed, and the fact that both
crazy.
he and Carrie Elwes, were doing this intense fencing, and I actually did fencing for a while when I lived out in Minnesota, and it's hard. It's incredibly hard.
Oh, I can't imagine.
And to do it that well with your left hands, and then then be able to
Right.
switch right in the middle and continue on like that. But his intensity, his thoughtfulness, his there was an article that came out, an interview with him, probably about 10, 15 years ago, where he talked about how he had to do a lot of introspection because his intensity often led him to be very unforgiving of other people who weren't as into whatever it is that they were
Mhm.
working on as him.
Got it.
And so he would hold that against them. And so he's like, I was kind of an asshole to a lot of people that I really cared about.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, because of my own blinders on about how I thought things should be, I
Right.
wasn't nearly as compassionate as what I felt.
Yeah.
That,
Mm.
like, I love these people and I wanted them to be happy and I appreciate this, but I was so driven with what I was doing that oftentimes I let my own ego get in the way. And so for somebody later in their life, close to 60, to have that realization and to step back and go, wow, I've alienated a lot of people and I need to do a lot of introspection on myself because that's not the kind of person I want to be, and really change a lot of who he was and become a much gentler person.
Yeah.
That for me, and just being able to talk with somebody like that, and he's lived such a fascinating life. He's been on Broadway. He's been on all kinds of series. He's put out albums. He's done all kinds of movies, and some of them cultural touchstones. And so to be able to talk with somebody like that would be really, really fascinating.
That's amazing. That's a great one. Wow.
And I know I should say one of the Stoics, but I mean, I know so much because I study them so much. I mean, pretty much every day. It's like I almost feel like I know them so much. Where Socrates never wrote anything down, so we only know about him.
About him, yeah.
So, wow, that would be really tough. Yeah, I'm trying to think who else were some of my idols growing up that would be interesting people. I mean, honestly, so a living person that more of a contemporary would be, I'd love to sit down with Tim Ferriss. I think he's
That'd be cool.
He's a very thoughtful person. I know a lot of people bag on him for different things, but what I can appreciate him is that he works very hard to own up to his own shit and to own his weaknesses and to be able to look for ways to get through that, which is why, when he found Stoicism, it was very much wow, this is a framework for life that is working for me. And he went all in for quite some time. Now he doesn't talk about it nearly as much, but it's still very much part of his philosophy. But just to sit down and to really get to know him, the behind the scenes him, I think would be interesting. I think he's pretty open about most things. And so there's not a lot to glean from that, but I find him interesting. I find him very thoughtful. I find him willing to be very open-minded about life and to try and share those things. So I think he would be also another very interesting person. And also I'd like to buy him dinner just as a gratitude of like, hey, thanks for all the work you put out, and thanks for pulling me into Stoicism, because this is something that changed my life. It has changed my whole outlook on life as I've been dealing with all kinds of crap here as trying to move to Amsterdam and find a permanent place to live. I've been scammed. I lost a bunch of money from somebody who represented himself as a broker.
Oh, geez.
Finding a place has been really challenging because the housing market is so tight here. So it's just like one after the other. Okay, let me put an offer on that one, offer on that one, offer on that one, and nothing's coming through. And before this, I was living in a dumpy dorm room, and the only reason I took it was because it was a third the cost of anything else. So, but it was awful. I had to clean the refrigerator when I first got in there because it was moldy. It was a little sketch, but all through all of this and all of the the hard things that I've had to work through and picking up from the States, my last relationship ending, that was a 10-year relationship,
Hmm.
being laid off a little over a year ago and not being able to find anything, even after applying for 80 jobs, even though
Oh,
I've been in this field for, like I said, 25 years now, just all of these things that would cause plenty of people to feel despair, feel distress. I've just leaned into my stoicism as hard as I can, because it's the thing
It's cool.
it's the foundation that keeps me sane when I look at these things. Like, okay, it's just another thing. What can you do about this?
right.
What do you need to do?
Love that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
What are the options that you have, rather than blaming all of these things going on? These are just things that happen to you. So what are you going to do about it? And then moving
Absolutely.
forward on that. So
It's really cool. Look into that.
So in our program, we teach a lot of people about how to create a balanced lifestyle, really having intention in all different parts of life. But one thing that we really enjoy asking people is, what does a balanced life look like for you? Where is it that you kind of feel your best self when you can focus on different areas? What does a balanced lifestyle look like?
Oh, this is a tough one. I haven't felt very balanced for the last little while. So I'm writing a book. I was contacted by a publisher a few months ago, and they have a series of like philosophy 101, ethics 101, and they wanted me to write Stoicism 101 for them.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, they're owned by Simon and Schuster. And when the deadline was pretty tight, so I had them push it back a month, but they didn't push back the 50% deadline. And I thought it was in June, and I looked at it. I just want to make sure that I was like, okay, let me put these on my calendar, make sure I got them right. And it was actually May 5th. So I ended up having to write the first half of the book in about 3.5 weeks.
In how long?
3.5 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
what a topic too to Graham.
Yeah. Exactly. So for most of April, basically I was living in this dumpy dorm room, and I was just sitting there writing for about 10 hours a day, 10 to 12 hours a day. And so very unbalanced, unfortunately, but I knew that if I had them push it back a month, then I might slide on it. And so it was one of those things of like, okay, you know what? I do best when I do have those deadlines. So let me step up and do this. And I got into such a flow that afterwards, my next podcast episode that I was writing, which normally takes me about 6 hours, I wrote it in 3 hours and it was done. Just sat down, because I was just so in this flow of sitting down and basically writing, each chapter. Yeah. Each chapter is about 800, 900 words in the book. And so I was writing about a chapter to 2 chapters every single day, and including the editing and everything. So it was pretty wild. So
unreal.
Yeah. So I haven't been very balanced for a while, just because I worked on that, and working on my coaching program, which is part of my next focus on this. I'm really working hard on learning the things that I don't know. How do I do sales? How do I encourage people? How do I make sure that when I'm talking to people that this is a good fit? Coming up with the content material. I have 298 episodes of content to be able to go back through, to be able to pull into this. So it's like, what's going to be most effective? And so I've been working a lot as far as that goes. And then in the meantime, going and looking at different apartments and trying to find that. So I wish I could say that I was living balanced, but I'm not at the moment. But I do take time every single day. I do yoga in the morning, first thing, 20 minutes, workout every other day. I try to, I have a bicycle here, so I try and ride at least 3 or 4 times a week, at least an hour or so. So I make sure that I fit those things in, that for me, but for me also, the work is something that I really enjoy. And so I'm also at a space where that's really what I need to focus on. I don't have a primary relationship right now. My kids are grown up and they're out of the house. And so I have more time to be able to focus on those things, and I'm not working a full-time job. And so for me, I find that balance really comes from, are you doing something that you really enjoy? And are you making time for the other people in your life? And right now it's because it's a little bit out of balance, because I don't have, I don't have a partner or anything like that, but I make sure that, I go out with friends at least, twice a week or something like that. I need to do that more now that I'm living a little bit closer to the city. So it's going to be a bit easier. So it's really right now I'm in what I call a liminal state. I don't know if you guys know what liminal state means.
Mm.
Mm-mm.
So liminal state is
Liminal.
the space, or liminal space is actually what it's called. It's the space in between states. And
Okay.
it's the idea of when a liquid becomes a gas, there's this space right in between that. What is that called? That's that liminal space. You're not the liquid anymore, but you're not the gas. You're right on that cusp.
Right.
And so for me, I feel like the last few months I've been in a liminal space. I
Interesting.
moved out of Portland,
Yeah.
and I'm not settled here yet. So I'm kind of in this weird space, and it's been very disconcerting, and it's very uncomfortable. But I find that being able to embrace the liminal spaces in our life, and for me, I stumbled on that term about a year ago, and I was like, that's so cool. I really like that idea of thinking about liminal spaces in different contexts. And then I was watching Constellation on Apple TV with Numi Rapace, which is this really interesting sci-fi movie. And they talk about liminal spaces in there, and they have this whole episode where they're talking about it. So it's just like,
interesting.
I never heard that word, and suddenly this comes up. This is so cool, because I never heard of that concept until now. But I thought it was just a really interesting idea of being in that liminal space is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You feel like nothing is settled. You feel like you're not in one place or the other, and learning to be comfortable with that, I think, has really, really been helpful. And I know that once I kind of get settled into a place, I finally get a space, then my life will change very differently. And so I'm just learning to kind of flow with things.
Seems like it's a time where there's lots of uncomfortable growth in preparation, but it's just natural. It's not that you're forcing it. It's just happening naturally.
Yeah. And I find that the less I worry about, okay, when am I going to get a place? I just need to get a place, or I need to do this, or I need to do that.
Yeah.
More just kind of flow with things. It's like, hey, this is where I am right now. And this is what it's going to be for now. And the more that you can, and they talk about that in Stoicism, don't wish for things to happen as you wish for things to happen as they do, and things will flow well for you.
I love that.
That's very cool. It's a powerful, powerful lesson for the listeners there. Embrace that challenge and embrace where you are today. Be in the moment, be present. We talk about that a lot, but I love how you sum that up.
And it's hard because we want to push through. We're like, oh, but if I work harder, then it will do it. And sometimes I need to remind myself,
right,
I need to work harder. Like today, I felt bad about not getting anything done because I was feeling sick last night, and just was recovering today. But I just recognized that pushing myself wasn't going to do anything. I was going to sit at the computer and be frustrated while working on things. So
exactly.
This is what life served up for me today. I just need to rest. And like I said, I took a long nap, and I went for a walk, had some dinner. Now I'm talking to you guys. So
that's awesome. So I know that you've got a lot going on right now, but in the times that you don't have a lot going on, or that you are stressed, what are some self-care practices that you do to mitigate that stress and or chaos in life? What are some things that you do to kind of relieve that? I know you talked about walks and yoga. I mean, is that kind of where you go, or is there another way that you mitigate stress?
Well, I found the yoga for me as I'm getting older has been really helpful, because when I wake up, all the muscles are a little bit tight and a little bit sore, and just doing that 20 minutes every day has changed my health dramatically. Like I can still wake up feeling a little bit tight, from maybe doing some lifting the day before, but I'm also an avid cyclist since 2003. I'm talking like, anywhere from 100 to 200 miles a week was pretty much my average.
Wow.
And so, I go on long 40, 50 mile rides and stuff like that. And so I built, my leg muscles are very, very muscular. And so unfortunately then, because of those muscles over those years and not a lot of stretching, it was causing hip problems, causing knee problems. I actually have numbness on the sides of my legs from some nerve damage that I did because the muscles would pull against each other. Oh, wow. And, never heard of that. Basically, so I have some numb spots. And when it gets really bad, I bump my knees on things and just shooting pain.
Oh.
And so doing yoga every day just mitigates all of that. And so that's just something that I've just built into my routine. Other things, when I'm feeling stressed out, I'll sit down and just journal. And because I write so much. I can now.
Yep.
I have no idea what my typing speed is, but I'm sure it's ridiculously fast now because I've been typing for so long, and also being a computer programmer.
Yeah.
But doing things like that, the one thing I do miss is that I'm also a musician and I don't have a keyboard here. I've been looking, but I also play guitar. So I was looking at Amazon earlier, getting a guitar shipped to me, just a nice little classical guitar. So it's nice and portable. So the cycling is my other thing, going on walks, reading, also listen to comedy. That's another thing that I like to do. I found that while I like the dark, Nordic, serious, spooky, series and stuff like that, or like Luther, and I mean, I like Prime, things like that, because they're so moody, and I really kind of like those dark moods. And a lot of the stuff that's set up in the Nordic countries, often like Wallander and stuff, is very dark, and I kind of like that mood. But I also recognize that if I go to bed like that, it's not a good thing. So before I go to bed, I usually watch John Oliver or something like that, just to lighten things up. And so I found that comedy is a fantastic way, which, it's funny because everybody thinks, well, Stoics are so serious about everything. And we are, because, Stoics focus on, living a virtuous life, which means we're constantly, how are we being wise? Are we being just with the way that we treat other people?
Yeah, exactly.
Are we acting courageous? Are we, are we practicing self-discipline? And so it kind of feels like it's boring in a lot of ways, but recognizing that you're trying to live a good life, and that part of a good life is also just being able to laugh at the ridiculousness of life.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.
Huge.
huge part of stress relief for me is laughing.
Absolutely.
That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, they've shown physiologically it releases endorphins, all of those kind of things. And so I found for me, when life gets too stressful, there's sometimes where I felt overwhelmed. A couple of weeks ago, I was listening to a song, and there's this line in there that says, "I felt supremely alone," and I was just having a really shit day, and I just started bawling, and I was just like, and everything felt like it was going against me, and so I just kind of had that relief, and so just letting that go, and then after about 10 minutes of that, just kind of like, okay. So I think recognizing, Stoicism is not about cutting off your emotions and cutting off your feelings and being so controlled. It's about putting up tools in place so that when you feel those things, you can make better choices. So Alex Hormozy, I was watching one of his things yesterday, and he had this great thing that was perfectly Stoic for me, and I actually wrote it down. I can grab it right here because it was so perfect. And he talked about... Yeah, he was walking along with his wife, and he's just like, "Oh, I want things to grow faster, and I'm so impatient," and stuff like that. She's like, "No, you're not. You're very patient." He's like, "No, but I feel so impatient." And she's like, "There's a difference between feeling impatient and being impatient." And he said, being patient is not about not feeling impatient. It's about doing the patient thing even though you don't feel it. And Stoicism is very much that same way. It's like, I'm not feeling very courageous, but I'm going to do the courageous thing. I'm not feeling not feeling very kind today, but I'm going to do the kind thing, even though I want to punch somebody in the nose. Taking that and going,
wow,
okay, what's the kind thing to do here, even though I don't feel kind? And so oftentimes that's what helps me to remember, is that I don't have to be perfect. I can, when I'm having a shit day and I need to cry or laugh or whatever it is, feel that emotion, but feel it in a way that's going to be beneficial. And sometimes you just kind of need to just have a release. And that was very, very helpful for me. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's such a great line. I had to write that down.
That's golden. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Love that.
Yeah, you saying those things, I think I'm realizing how stoic I am.
Well, like I said, it's not about not feeling it. It's about feeling it, but doing the right thing anyway.
Still doing
That's
the right
what Stoicism is about.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap things up, we got our kind of last question. This is a deep one, but we're going to try to see if we can keep it under a few minutes. A lot of us chase our purpose, trying to understand it. It's something that always changes, and a North Star we're always running towards. What would you say is your purpose, if you think you've really found it and dialed it? And how did you come up with it? How did you find it? What was the aha moment? You're like, this is it. This is my purpose. This is what I'm supposed to be doing right now in my life, in this part of my life?
Oh,
It's a big question.
yeah. I can't say that I had an epiphany or, this is it. It was just more of a gradual coming to a place where recognizing the tools and talents that I've developed over my whole life, but especially over the last 6 years and doing the podcast. After I got laid off last year, like I said, I applied for 80 different jobs and I got one call back, which was very unusual because I'm very good at what I do and I've been doing it for so long. And the technologies that I use are very mainstream. So it's not like there aren't positions in that. But I found that I really wasn't interested in looking at code outside of work. What was interesting to me was to continue working on the podcast. It was coaching people. It was talking with them about the things that were going on. And when I was younger, I thought about going into psychology, but I felt, given my background and how, all the shit going on in my life, I was just like, I'm not going to be a great therapist because I've got too much crap in my life. And I can't tell people how to live a good life when I feel like mine is such in chaos. But I found that I think just with the wisdom that I've gained through working on my podcast, through talking with lots of people and coaching them on these things, and having worked through so many things in my own life to the point where I feel comfortable in my own skin, and knowing who I am and knowing that I'm comfortable with that, which often some people never get. Some people, when they're 70, they get it. For me, it took until I was close to 50. And a lot of that was learning to accept all the crappy things about myself. That was part of it. And once I kind of made that shift of like, oh, all these things that I think are so crappy about me are things that everybody else is struggling with.
Absolutely.
And I need to help them to do that. So I guess I could say that episode, which was 28, and I remember the episode because it was such a pivotal one for me, episode 218.
Okay.
So I had a blowout with my ex-partner, and it was something that she did which really, really hurt me. And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't be very stoic about it. And what I realized is that my self-esteem was wrapped up in what I thought she thought of me. Not necessarily what she thought of me, but what I thought she thought of me. And because of that, if she was annoyed, frustrated with me, anything like that, then I felt like I was a bad person. And so I was like, okay, that's an interesting, so I was making that connection. I'm like, okay, so I need her validation to feel like I'm a good person. But why? Why do I need her validation on there? What is so awful about me that I need somebody else to think that I'm okay for me to feel okay about myself? That's an interesting, it was an interesting question. I'm like, okay, why is this happening? I don't understand this. Then I was like, okay, well, if I'm so bad, what is it that's so bad about me?
Yeah. Wow.
So I went and I sat down and I took a piece of paper and I wrote down all the things that I didn't like about myself. Everybody's like, write all the good things about you. I'm like, no, I want to know what's so awful about me. So I made this big long list and I looked at it and I was just kind of like, okay, well, is it really that bad? Nothing on here is really all that bad. I mean, these are all things that my friends struggle with.
Yeah.
And I still love and accept them. And if my friend came to me with this list and said, here's all the crap about me, you should hate me. And I'd look at it and be like, that's it. I already know all of this stuff about you. So what's the problem here? And it was just like this change.
Insane.
And I remember that it was such a freeing thing because I was like, okay, there's nothing really all that bad about me. And so then later I was talking with another friend of mine and I was talking about self-acceptance and she was struggling with some stuff. And I'm like, but you are so kind and you accept other people so much. She's like, yeah, because other people it's easy, but myself it's so hard. And so I walked her through that exercise. Like, okay, tell me one thing you hate about yourself. Tell me another thing. It's like 5 things. And I'm like,
not that bad.
Now, are those things that bad? I still love you. If your friend came to you and did this, would you still love them for all of these things? And she was like,
that's
it. That's self-acceptance. And I'm like, yeah, that's self-acceptance. And she went, that's so much easier than I thought it was going to be because we put the idea of self-acceptance, something that's just way out there and it's so hard to do, but it's really not. It's just looking at all the things that you don't like about yourself and going, can I just at least accept this about me? It's not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world. I can accept it. I don't like it. I don't love it, but I can just accept that that's part of who I am. So I would say that was probably a pivotal thing, was when I was able to do that, I was like, I want other people to know this thing.
Right.
Exactly.
What an amazing exercise.
I know, man. That's amazing. So Eric, as we wrap up, where can people find you if they want to get in touch, learn more about you, what you do? Where can they find you at?
They can find the podcast on all the major casting platforms, and my website is stoic.coffee. And the name of the podcast is Stoic Coffee Break. So it's usually about 10 to 15 minutes. So you can sit down and drink a cup of coffee and enjoy a nice Stoic thought for the day. And there's 297 episodes out there right now, so there's plenty for you to listen to.
Amazing. We will definitely be listening.
One last question. One last question. How do you drink your coffee? What's your favorite way to? You got to know from someone that's got a podcast called Stoic Coffee Break.
I actually like mochas, honestly, with a little bit of dark chocolate in it. I like it so it's got I like it rich but not too sweet. So just a mocha with nothing really too extra, and a little bit of oat milk in it to kind of give it a little creaminess. And that's about it. So it's pretty simple. So luckily they have Hoffer milk is what it's called here, and that's how I drink my coffee. Pretty straightforward.
Perfect. Appreciate you breaking that down. Otherwise, it was going to bug me. Wouldn't be able to fall asleep.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, Eric, we appreciate you being here, man. It was an amazing conversation, and looking forward to having you back again.
All right. I appreciate you guys having me on here.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Peak Podcast. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and check us out on any podcast platform. And we'll see you on the next Peak Podcast episode.
See you guys.